Hi, everyone. It's really good to see you here today and have so many wonderful people here. My name is Katie Kearns, and I'm at the graduate school at Indiana University. And I've been part of a project for 3 years now called Transforming Your Research into Teaching. And I'm happy to be here with a colleague, Bailey, and I'll let her introduce herself and then we'll get started.
Hi, I'm a grad student in philosophy at the University of Illinois at Chicago. And this is my first year being involved in Tyrant, but I'm really pleased to be working with Katie and everyone else who's here.
So we have got a lot of multimedia things to share with you today. So patience as we maneuver through some of these. And one thing that we're going to do is share a link with you. It's in the chat. There's also a QR code if you want to get to it by your phone. We have some materials to share with you, including the slides for today. We have set up a media channel of some of the recordings that we'll share with you, some of students' presentations, and some of the materials from the workshop series that we are leading this particular summer. So we just wanted to make sure that you had access to everything that we're sharing with you today. So for today, when we're talking about designing a course around your research, we wanted to plant some seeds about how you can use your research as a foundation for teaching and design of a class. Talk about how people think about including inclusivity as part of their course design. We're going to share some of the work of past participants in that course that's in air quotes tyrant, which means transforming your research into teaching. We're going to share some bits about how different kinds of communities of practice have been really important for the participants in developing their course materials and just their overall experience as being part of this workshop series. And we hope that and sharing all of this with you that you'll be really excited to join us next semester if you haven't been a part of this experience before. I'm going to pass the microphone over to Bailey, who's going to get us started and talking about kind of setting the stage for what we're talking about today and designing a course around your research.
All right, so we're going to ask you to engage your imagination now. And this may be familiar to some of you. You've already done it in the past. Some of you, this might be in the near future. But imagine that you're at your academic job interview. So this is 3 days of questions, conversation, meals with people, not enough quiet time, not enough bathroom breaks. If you're introverted like me, you're like really struggling at this point. And it's late on the second day. You're at a conference room table, the head of the table discussing your 5-year research plan with the search committee. And one of the members asks you, what do you imagine an upper level undergraduate course about your research would look like? So we want you to take a moment and imagine this scenario and in the chat sort of share your reactions and think about what sensations come to mind at this moment. So once you have been given that question, what are you feeling? And then what emotional responses come to mind? And so we'll give you a minute to add your responses in the chat and see how people are feeling at this moment.
See, coming out in 2 categories, Bailey. Oh my gosh, this is so exciting. Oh my gosh, what do I do?
And there's a lot of overlap of excited and anxious. I like this panic in all caps with double exclamation points. So how many of you think you would actually be prepared for that question? I mean, you can put a hand up or you can just sort of think to yourself and we'll imagine your answer. But so one of the goals that we have, more prepared than I was at my last interview, that's good. One of the goals that we have of Tyrant is thinking about making sure that our future faculty are actually prepared for answering this question so that they get to be excited, but hopefully not as panicked as some of you are responding. And so we want to we have a live panelist, and then we have some recorded panelists of previous Tyrant participants who actually have an answer and are prepared to give this course pitch. So this is what we're going to hear from what they would say when they were at this meeting. And so first we're going to see a video recording from Ana Diaz Barriga, her 3-minute course pitch. We're going to have Lydia Renick, who's here live with us, give us her course pitch. And then Alex Tamarius also has in the link to the materials that you got earlier in the presentation, another course pitch that we invite you all to go explore after this panel. So I guess, Kate, we are ready for that video.
All right, give me a thumbs up if you can hear the sound once I hit play.
Hello, my name is Ana Diaz Barriga. I am a PhD candidate in the interdisciplinary PhD in theater and drama at Northwestern University. My area of research is puppetry. Within this field, I investigate the sophisticated techniques that puppeteers use to guide the cognitive processes of the audience using methods from both theater studies and cognitive science. During transforming your research into teaching last summer, I created a course called Making Sense of Things. This class is an introductory research and writing course for first-year theater students, which focuses on the analysis of puppet theater. The class combines discussions and writing to teach students how to examine and engage with puppetry performance, providing them with the foundations for university-level research paper writing that incorporates performance analysis and the use of secondary sources. Although the course does not integrate information on the cognitive methods I use in my research, it makes use of my knowledge of puppetry to provide students with foundational vocabulary and theoretical tools for understanding how puppetry performance works. The course begins by providing students with the vocabulary about the puppet and puppeteer so that they can describe what they see on stage. I introduce them to some of the main theories and questions in the field before moving on to discussing some of the methodologies used to analyze puppetry performance. Students apply what they've learned by analyzing puppetry sources and performances before creating their final research project. I created scaffolded assignments for my course, which students complete to apply the knowledge they gain in each unit. These assignments build on each other to expand the students' research and writing skills, at the same time as deepening their ability to conduct a performance analysis and see how the elements in a performance connect with each other. By the end of the course, students complete a research paper on a puppetry topic of their choice. I was able to teach this course after completing Tyrant, and students chose topics ranging from the analysis of a specific performance, understanding how puppetry is used in horror movies and shows, or how puppetry can be used for activism. I think puppetry has the potential to change how we relate to objects around us, by showing us their capacity for communication, whether they are being manipulated by a performer or not. Furthermore, I believe puppetry shows us our desire to assign an inner life to others and our willingness to empathize and connect. My course seeks to highlight these for students while allowing them to see how all of the elements on the stage in a performance contribute to communicate a message and a story to the audience. It also breaks the preconception that puppetry is only for children, and by introducing the students to examples of different artists and performances, it shows them the possibilities of this form so that they know it is a technique that is available to them as they move forward in their journey as theater makers. Thank you.
I have to, I'm not in STEM, Rachel, but I also want to take this course. That was amazing sounding. Yeah, so if we could hear from Lydia now to share her course pitch. Give us a moment though to get her slide back on the screen. Whenever you're ready, Lydia.
So from our classrooms to our social media feeds, from our living rooms to our legislatures, the vibrancy of our democracy hinges on how well we're able to talk about contentious topics together. Good afternoon, I'm Lydia Renick. I'm currently a postdoctoral teaching and research associate for the Civil Discourse Lab at the University of New Hampshire. I was part of the 2019 Transforming Your Research into Teaching cohort while I was at the University of Colorado Boulder. As a scholar of communication, my research seeks to understand how communication practices enable and constrain meaningful democratic engagement. Building on my expertise, my course, Intro to Civil Discourse, steps into the agora of civic discussion to ask, how do we talk about politics together in ways that foster the types of meaningful engagement that we seek? To begin to answer this question, our class will survey the intersections of democratic debate, dialogue, and deliberation with acts of civility and incivility within our political discourse. Designed for second and third year undergraduates, this course was shaped by 6 learning goals, which you can read on the slide. So identifying and understanding contemporary exemplars of incivility and civility, focusing on how civility and incivility are discursively accomplished, engaging with the contemporary debates about civility. So that is to say, do we have an incivility crisis in our political discourse? Surveying how civility and incivility become a rhetorical tool to forward political arguments, understanding the nature of our argument culture and adversarial disagreement and the ways that that hinders constructive debate, and then turning to examine the potential for public deliberation and dialogue to foster meaningful civil discourse across context and divided groups. Finally, students are acted to build critical reflexivity by participating in deliberative dialogues with their peers and developing capacities for facilitation, active listening, and responsive questioning. My course develops then to include examples of assessment such as artifacts analysis and op-ed, where students take a position on the current civility crisis and weekly discussion questions. This course also then integrates, high impact practice-based learning, where students are participating with their peers in deliberative dialogues about topics such as voting rights and access to higher education. Together then with these concepts, assignments, and activities, students in Intro to Civil Discourse are provided with a first foray into understanding how, to quote Dewey, democracy begins in conversation.
That sounds like a class everyone needs to take.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Lydia. I'm going to hand it back to Katie for our next section.
Thanks so much to Anna and Lydia and to Bailey. Anna we have some reflections from Anna later on about what meaning she has taken from her experience in Tyrant. And Lydia is going to stay with us through the end of the session so we can actually chat with her a little bit about her experience in designing this course. What you are seeing is from Lydia and Anna and also Alex on the Media Space site are the final projects for the course. So we spend the whole workshop series in building up to that final course project of having a syllabus and what looks from the outside like a 3-minute thesis, but instead of being based on your research, it's based on your teaching. And that was the assignment we gave the students or the participants, graduate students and postdocs, was a 3-minute talk with 1 slide, no animation, about summarizing their course. And graduate students and postdocs have really given us a lot of feedback about how important it has been, not just to have that syllabus and the materials ready to teach a course of their own design in their expertise area, but also that practice of synthesizing and summarizing their course into 1 slide and being able to rationalize and make transparent their deliberate choices around their course design were really important parts of this experience of being part of transforming your research into teaching. So the purpose of transforming your research into teaching is that graduate students and postdocs participating in it develop a syllabus that's based on their expertise, with hopes that they could use it for a job talk, the Chalk Talk interview questions that they might get, or use it as part of a proposal process to teach that course on their own campus or as part of a summer experience, that this would be material for their teaching portfolio that they could put into practice. We have, I'll go through some of the communities that we have involved in TYRT, which is what we call it for short. There's their local institutional community, and they also have a cross-network community of members across the campuses participating in TYRT. And they get a lot of practice talking about their research within the context of teaching. And by practicing pretty much every single week, we get engaged in practice. We're hoping to build graduate students and postdocs comfort and ease and confidence in talking about their research within a classroom context, and really helping them engage with what they are so excited about in their research in a classroom setting. You'll notice from the 3 examples that we've shared with you, Anna and Lydia are not in STEM, as one person noted in the chat, and Alex is in chemistry. So though CIRTL is focused on STEM disciplines, science, technology, engineering, and math, graduate students and postdocs across all fields and disciplines are welcome to participate in this experience. And that's actually a really big asset for us in the design of this workshop series, because it helps the members learn to talk about their research to imagined undergraduate students by all of us being they're really wise and encouraging students in the classroom. I want to tell you just a little bit about what happens in the course. So it is over the summer and we're just finishing it up now. This week we have course presentations going on right now. It's a 6-week course or workshop series that has weekly synchronous meetings. And then we have a final week right now of our course pitch presentations. And I'm sharing with you the content areas that we go through: choosing a course topic, course mapping, writing learning objectives, sequencing the content in the right order, designing assessments, choosing instructional methods, how to evaluate the learning and experiences in the course, and then again, that final project presentation. To give credit where it's due, we are all of us are grateful for Dr. Darren Hoffman, who's at the University of Iowa, and I think he's here, he's been texting me, I noticed. He originally developed the program and invited many of us to participate in doing this as a cross-institutional experience in 2019. So this is the 3rd year that we've done it, and we now have 12 institutions participating. I'm pretty sure my math is right. Over 25 local learning community facilitators, which includes deans, teaching and learning center, full-time staff, as well as some postdocs and graduate students. So we have a really broad mix of people facilitating. And then this year we've had over 300 graduate students and postdocs participating in the workshop series. Like I mentioned, we have several different kinds of communities that happen in TYRT, and I think a hybrid networked community might be the right description for it if we were to put it in pedagogy terms. We have weekly video content that primarily Darren has put together, although we do have contributors among our facilitator team who've also made some of the videos as well. We have asynchronous peer feedback groups where graduate students in similar fields across different institutions, but in the same field, asynchronously give feedback to each other through a shared Google Drive. And then we have our synchronous local learning communities. These are multidisciplinary spaces, and they're predominantly for discussion or elaboration of ideas, and definitely for practice, where we do a lot of breakout rooms and people practice talking about various aspects of their courses. So with that, we wanted to share with you just a few reflections about what graduate students and postdocs have told us about their experience in this particular class and how it helps them and what value they take away from it. So I'll pass this back to Bailey.
I will, I suppose, read this on Anna's behalf. So in answer to the question, what was the value of TYRT to you and how did it help you? She says, before joining TYRT, I was extremely nervous about creating a class. I'm an international student, and this was going to be my first time teaching at a university level. and it was going to be in a country where I did not study my undergrad. I felt Tyrant really helped me get a sense of what I should keep in mind to ensure my class was a space that made all of my students feel welcome and inspired. The way the program was structured allowed me to not feel overwhelmed by tackling one thing at a time without ever losing sight of the big picture. Through the backwards design model, I could see how each element of my class informed all the other elements, and I felt I was able to create a cohesive course that built my student skills. Overall, Tyrant was an amazing foundation. I felt prepared to continue developing my class, and I feel I have the tools necessary to be able to create other classes that make the most of my areas of expertise. Which I want to point out just real quickly about that, just that sense of inclusivity, but also how she feels prepared to continue to design other courses based off of that. So Tyra didn't just empower her for this one course that she designed, it empowers beyond that, which I think is really amazing. And so we also have a video now from Alex Tamarius, who is going to give us a quick answer to this question.
All right, I think I picked the wrong screen to share. No, I didn't. Once again, though, thumbs up as soon as I start playing the video if you can hear the sound, so I know that it works.
So what is the value of Tyrant to me, and how did it help me? So Tyrant was a really amazing opportunity to really think about course design with a completely clean slate. So course design, we often sort of think about what the precedent of how a course was taught before. And the great thing about trying to transform your research into a course design is that in a lot of cases, there really isn't a course that exactly reflects the research that you did. And so you have to come up with the sequencing and what the learning objectives, what you want the students to get out of the course on your own. And the thing that's really incredible about the Tyrant program is that they walk you through that in, I think, a very straightforward way. You go through each week developing a new piece of the course, and it really takes you through the backwards design process where you're starting with what you want the students to be able to do and ending with the content and what each lecture will contain. And it was absolutely beautifully done, and it's really helped me in how I design all of my courses, not just the one I developed for Tyrant. So it was an incredibly helpful process, and I'm so glad I signed up. So why did
I think I stopped sharing a little early. Sorry, I thought I was going to be on top.
You did perfect, Kate, because she had clipped two things together. So you did awesome. No worries.
Oh, perfect.
Right. And I believe, yes, here we go, getting our slides back. We are also going to now hear from Lydia and a new participant, Victoria Stout, for them to answer these questions. So if Lydia will start us off again, and then we'll hear from Victoria after.
Echoing what has been said by Anna and Alex, a lot of the value for me was having a framework for designing a course. While I had taught independently and done some design, I hadn't really designed an entire course from the ground up. I also was challenged through the Tyrant program to think about how to make my research the center point of my teaching, rather than starting with an established area of my field like interpersonal and intercultural, and thinking about how my expertise might shape that existing umbrella of a course that that's always on the books in most institutions. In that way, I appreciated not just the backward design piece, because admittedly, I didn't always start with exactly what I wanted my students to do, but I appreciated the part of thinking through how do the concepts marry together? What becomes the focal point communication practices in this class? How do I sequence those? And what overall is the story that I'm going to be able to tell through my course? Moving there to think about what are the objectives, what are the assessments, and also then what's this whole thing going to come together to be appropriate, because I needed to teach this for sophomores and juniors. I'll talk a little bit more about my situation in the next question. But I will also echo to say that I've used this model then to design other special topics courses.
That's awesome. Hi, so I'm Victoria, and so I'm somebody, I'm at CU Boulder. I'm somebody that sort of like struggles in grad school. Like I'm not really a very strong researcher, and so and also like struggles a lot of like imposter syndrome kind of stuff. And so I think for me, probably the biggest value of Tyra is that, especially in Darren's lectures and stuff, it's like it's put in a very approachable way, and it's kind of like you and anyone can do this. So I think I found that approach and like the ability to like go through the course as like just very empowering in terms of like this is a real skill that you can hold on to. And even though I spent a lot of my mental energy like questioning my skills and blah blah, all this like imposter syndrome-y stuff, it was a very empowering experience of just like, no, this is a thing you can do. Like you can't, you can go off and teach your own courses if that was something that you wanted to do, and so I think just that, even though I haven't put my course into practice or anything like that, but I think just feeling that skill is solid that I can hold on to, I think has been really valuable to me, like kind of emotionally, as I progress through grad school.
Do you want me to take it from here, Bailey?
I think you have the next one.
I do. It's really, I think you're hearing a consistent message from these four participants in our program that this is a place for them to do, to feel comfortable and supported and resourced and that the pacing really helps them go through this process of developing a syllabus, and that they're doing a lot of self-exploration as part of this process and getting to design a course as they would want to do it. And then they might end up backing up a little bit from that depending upon the particular context. But really in this workshop series, anything goes really. And that can be a really fun place as long as we're putting a lot of support for people around that. We also asked the participants for today's session about why they joined and what they've done with their course design since TYRT. I am this age, which means I have to wear my reading glasses. So Anna from Northwestern shared with us a little bit. When I joined TYRT, I knew I was going to teach a course at my institution that year. It was going to be my first class, and I felt very lost as to how to start creating a course that was inclusive, exciting for my students, and that made use of my strengths. My course continued to evolve after I finished TYRT. I was able to teach it twice, and I was able to make improvements each time by using the tools that I learned during the summer. My desire to ensure the sources I used in my course were relevant for my students and help them develop a sense of belonging in the field also led me to conduct a teaching as research project in my class, which enriched my instructional methods and materials and has deeply informed my pedagogical practice. So we can hear from Anna that this was a launching point for her into other experiences in CIRTL and really pretty deep engagement with this course and curiosity about her students learning in the course. We also asked Lydia and Victoria to think about these questions as well, why they joined and what they've done with the course design since they participated. And I'm pretty sure this is true that you were both in the same cohort at CU Boulder, is that right? You're like, I'm not sure.
No, I can't remember. Sure. I think we might have been 1 year off, maybe.
1 year.
I'm not
okay.
Sure.
Lydia, would you like to start us out?
Sure. So transforming your research into teaching was really a way to feed 3 birds with 1 scone for me. First, it was a way to really build my toolbox for doing course design and the frameworks and that process, as I talked about in my first response. Second, I actually knew that I was going into a postdoc program, and part of the postdoc was going to be teaching a course with the title Intro to Civil Discourse. But that was all that existed. And I should say, civil discourse sounds like a really provocative term, but it's not something that's actually used in our discipline. So I was going to need to decide for myself what that was and what that meant, as well as what content would fit into that. So the workshop in this way was a way for me to engage in that intellectual process, to think about and design my course in a way that also made it seem less overwhelming to design a course from the ground up. The other part of that for me was this opportunity to continue to be a part of the graduate teacher program and the CIRTL network in that way at CU Boulder, and to go through this process with other students from a whole range of disciplines, not my own, and to, at the end of the summer, end up with the course that I would be teaching a month later. What have I done then with that course? I have taught that course twice during my postdoc at the University of New Hampshire, and will be teaching that hopefully again this fall. I also designed another course. And though there were two things that I wanted to add then that I had alluded to. One was this course also really helped me think about how to design a intro level course versus an upper division course. And I'm not sure that that was always baked into the workshop, but that process of thinking about evaluation and objectives ended up being really helpful, because I teach course sequences now on civil discourse. So I have to not just define the pedagogy of the course, but also the curriculum as a part of my postdoc. And the other part of it was, it gave me some confidence when I had to redesign this course as a high flex last year versus when I taught it as an in-person course, to think about, okay, no, I really do have the resources and the frameworks to think about how would I redesign, reprioritize, change the medium of the course.
Thanks so much, Lydia. Victoria.
Yeah, Lydia's so awesome, so on it. All the plans, all the funny. So I'm the opposite. I was like a literally aimless wanderer grad student. Like I never do my research basically, and so I just saw this. I think it was probably just came through an email, and I liked work teaching, and so I just like kind of signed up for it, honestly, without knowing anything about what it was, about that it was some like big national thing. Like when I remember I was invited to like sign up for like a the Moodle, I was like, what is this crazy thing that I've signed up? I still didn't really get it until like 3 weeks in. Finally, I was like, okay, I'm starting to get how this is like laid out. But yeah, so I honestly, I joined it completely aimlessly, as I often do with teaching related events hosted on my campus. And I haven't really done much with my course design since Tyra, other than I did take an inclusive pedagogy course that like the following year after like the following semester. And so the deliverable of that course is something similar to a syllabus as well. So I'd already started to do some of that mental work, and then sort of, so I kind of pivoted it into a grad school class called inclusive pedagogy. So it's kind of, I could meld those two together and just dive into more and actually start to design real activities kind of with those things in mind. So yeah, I don't know when or if I'll ever be teaching it, but it was still good practice nonetheless.
Thank you, Victoria. So you can hear that we welcome all people who have any kind of interest in course design or just being part of a community of teachers together. And I think you can hear too that this experience leads to other experiences for graduate students and postdocs. So they tend to engage in the next step of things. And I appreciated what both Lydia alluded to, and Victoria hasn't told you yet, is that it also leads to these participants being leaders themselves or co-facilitators of the local learning communities. So we have three people here, and in fact, one is going to be recording Tom at the University of California, Irvine. He's in the middle of nowhere right now with no service, so he pre-recorded his responses. So what's their current role with TYRT, and what has been the value of that role to their personal and professional development? So I'm going to stop my share so Kate can share Tom's video.
Hey everyone, I'm Tom, and I've had two roles since I've been involved in TYRT, one as a facilitator and one on a research project that grew out of the 2020 program. As a facilitator last year, I worked with two others, Will and Danny, and we led our local meetings together. The value in that kind of role for me was exposure to practice with what I guess I'd call a different style of teaching than I'm typically used to. The focus of those meetings were for people to talk to each other, share ideas between themselves, share perspectives, and really engage in a productive conversation about the topics on a reflective level. And I think being able to manage or facilitate valuable conversations like that, where you're not the expert anymore and you almost take a step back and let the conversation happen because you're learning from it as well, that's a skill I hadn't had much practice with, but Will and Danny were real masters of that. And being able to watch and learn from them has enhanced, I think, my own set of teaching skills. This year's facilitator role has been as a kind of mentor to my co-facilitator this year, Emily, who's new to TYRT this year. Together, we wrote some of the homework prompts for the course and bouncing ideas off each other about what it is that we really want people to be getting out of the course each week has been valuable to me. She's full of creative ideas, so there's always something I was getting out of those writing tasks. The mentorship role came in more as we organized and delivered the local meetings. And, you know, I think it's true in general that you can always learn something from someone if you're willing to listen to what they have to say. And so the value in the mentorship role has been trying to model and be the sort of example that Will and Danny were for me last year. Emily's where I was last year, so if at the end of the course I feel like she's been able to learn something and take something away from the experience, that will have been a real success. Now, the research project I'm involved in, this project looked at what makes the group of facilitators work well together as a community with shared interests and shared goals in mind. Now, this sort of thing is obviously valuable in the ways you'd expect. I've been able to network with people from all over the place, build relationships there. We're all involved in writing a paper about this, so there's value for my career too in getting that stuff out there. But I'd say the real value of the research project has been being part of a systematic investigation of what makes this team work well together, why we enjoy it so much, and describing the value of the leadership you see in the team and what that all translates to in kind of practical terms. So that's something I've really enjoyed as well. Because, you know, you can take those lessons and you can apply them anywhere and everywhere. So there's all sorts of layers to the benefits of what you can get out of TYRT. And taking the course is just one of them, so I'd encourage anyone who's thinking about it to dive on in.
Grab my share screen back here. So we're also going to hear from Victoria and Bailey, if we can go in that order, to hear about their current roles with TYRT. You're hearing from Tom that he's been able to be a facilitator with Danny at UC Irvine, and we're really having a good time being a research team together and mentoring him on some research we're doing about TYRT. Victoria, do you want to share a little bit about your role in TYRT right now?
Yeah, so my role is as a co-facilitator in our synchronous CU Boulder meetings. And I think, you know, I think there are really two values for me. Number one, like there's so many experts in the room. I mean, I love the interdisciplinary network that we have. And so everyone in the room knows so much about so many things. So Preston and I sort of keep a running document of all the cool ideas of, you know, assessment types or learning goal types and things that sort of come up in the meetings. And so there's such an incredible wealth of knowledge. And you know, so I've learned a lot just from the folks participating in our synchronous groups. That's been really, really wonderful and valuable just to, hear how other sort of disciplines think about, you know, assessments, you know, that kind of thing. And I think the second biggest value of being a facilitator in TYRT for me has been the opportunity to work with and learn more from Preston, who is the local facilitator at CU Boulder. And so, yeah, I respect him and admire him so much. He's an incredible facilitator. And so just learning a lot from him and his way of being, but also about his path is something that I like really admire and sort of like see myself in. I'm having a lot of issues personally with like research and like what will future be for me after grad school, since I kind of want to abandon research altogether. And so I think, yeah, seeing his path and how he's pivoted it into like a teaching focused position has been very like empowering for me to see. And I just have really, really appreciated the opportunity just to work more with him and learn from him. And it's been, so I think that's really been the best thing for me is that mentorship there.
Thanks so much, Victoria. Bailey?
Yeah, so I somehow ended up in like triple co-facilitating roles. I've been co-facilitating the local group at the University of Illinois Chicago with Lauren Woods. And I also ended up working primarily with Katie on, we have what's called the Birds of a Feather groups, where it was a chance to socialize the tyrant participants to socialize without having to do homework, but to find and sort of build community and share experiences and have conversations about life as graduate students and postdocs. And then also co-facilitating these chalk talks. So this particular presentation, as well as 2 panels where participants from across the network have shared their course pitches with each other and with us. Which is funny because I have not taken Tyra. It was not available to me. It's like I said, the program is brand new at UIC, but it's something that I really would encourage people to take. I would take it myself if I wasn't leading it. But I think the value of having gotten involved, especially sort of across these different facilitation roles that I had, was, I was sort of as like community building. So within the UIC, making connections with peers from across the university, learning about what it is that they do, getting ideas from them, as sort of Victoria was saying, sharing resources and experiences, in both directions. Like we're both learning from and sort of helping out our participants, as well as in these Birds of a Feather talks that we have, having conversations about things that, shared experiences, or how do we move forward in graduate school with certain struggles that we have, hearing from people like Katie and Denise on what their experiences were like in graduate school, sort of getting mentorship that way. And thinking just about how to improve our own experiences in our own institutions, and the learning experience of our students by having these conversations with each other. I think all of that was really beneficial, and I'm really glad to have gotten that out of it.
Y'all are going to make me cry in front of like 100 people or whatever. I'm so glad to hear about all of the really great experiences that you've had as part of Tyrant, and that the mentorship that you've gotten from your peers and from the facilitators of that community have been really important and empowering for each of you. So I just wanted to close with a few kind of summary thoughts about what Tyrant, what it sounds like Tyrant represents for graduate students and postdocs. And in fact, it does for the full-time staff facilitators too as well. All of these things apply for us. That it's a place for our positive professional development, positive professional identity development. There's a lot of space for creativity and self-expression, and making space for ourselves as people, humans, personally and also professionally, and for our careers and whatever career choices that we're pursuing. So we don't necessarily imagine this as specifically for future faculty. If there are faculty mentors in the room, you can just put your fingers over your ears, but we do have participants who are using this space to design workshop series that they might do for community endeavors that they have. Again, a place for autonomy and, being one's own person and not necessarily having whatever the boss is saying or the faculty mentor always on their shoulders. It's a place of both intellectual and emotional resourcing for the students, so they get a lot of support along the way and encouragement. And that includes from their peers as well as the mentors. And we have lots of opportunities for feedback that happen throughout. And the time and accountability, there's dedicated space and we see each other regularly and we're moving together through that course. And accountability, there is no grade associated with it, but people do feel that accountability towards each other and being present for each other to share materials. I saw a question in the chat that was about, I just want to go back, asking about the previous, the latest edition of the course, which is, as Bailey mentioned, we are finishing up tomorrow. The Bloomington campus, Indiana University Bloomington, I'm pretty sure is the last session of the last day of the week. And our course presentations, course pitches are tomorrow afternoon. So we're the last set to finish out the semester of Tyrant. The students have been, we didn't include students from this current 2021 cohort in this particular presentation because we do see that final course pitch as another feedback opportunity and kind of a celebratory moment, getting to share with each other in a safe and encouraging space what they've done. And so we like to let it sit a year or at least a little bit of time or be able to put the course into practice or at least get a little emotional distance before they're sharing it in a very public kind of space. This is actually the first time I think that we're sharing some of these course pitches in public with others. But I really like the idea that we can make kind of a collection of 3-minute course pitches that we could be sharing with members of future iterations of this workshop series. I also want to share with you that Juliana had a question about several tips about how to design the course. And I'll be honest that I'm not sure about whether Juliana's question is about designing a course syllabus in general or about being part of local learning communities, but I will share, I can't get to it. Hold on, I don't want to share. In our shared folder, okay, I can't get to it. Bailey, can you take the wheel a second?
Sure, I'm not quite sure what I'm doing with the wheel.
Oh,
but...
no, I can't. I'm trying to get to the folder and I can't even get out of my slides. So that's my issue. Sorry, I was having technological glitch.
Rachel has stepped up and shared that with us.
Thank you.
And then Katie.
There's my Google Drive for you. You're welcome. Just sharing with you, this is the folder that we shared the tiny URL with you back at the beginning. So we have the slides from today. I've also compiled all the links from everything that we've been talking about today. We share with you the syllabus that all of the participants in this summer series have received, as well as just a schedule overview, which is just a tiny bit more specific than the one I shared with you on the slides. And then the PDF that I'm sharing with you too is like an advertisement that we use on the Bloomington campus anyway to encourage students to enroll in our course with a little bit of information about what it's like and the kinds of outcomes. As I mentioned at the beginning, we have 12 local learning communities, institutions participating this year. And Darren is running one of those as a cross-network learning community. So students from any CIRTL institution can participate in that one if you don't have a local host institution participating. I have to catch up on some of the chat questions. And I see that Darren is here. So if Darren wants to chime in as well, or if any other Tyrant facilitators are here and catching up in the chat with me, I'd love that help.
I can add one thing that might be a helpful clarifying comment, because I got a couple questions from people that would like to join and are curious about how they might do that, or whether they can find out if their institution is part of the group or not. And I would suggest that you connect with whoever your CIRTL leaders are at your institution. Those are the folks who are most closely connected to this program and have all the access to the information that they would need. If they want to establish a local learning community at their institution, all they have to do is reach out to one of the current team, and we can kind of set that up. It's a pretty easy process. It's just really a matter of making sure that they have the time to be the leader or work with team members to do leading of those groups. So if you're not sure who your leaders are at your institution, I would just say Google your institution name and the CIRTL acronym. And that's probably going to lead you right to that webpage that's going to list your program leaders at your institution. That'd be the quickest and easiest way to find out.
And because this is a CIRTL workshop series, it's part of the CIRTL catalog of offerings. So it would be announced, I can't remember, Kate, but usually in May-ish, we, like by early May, we would be announcing across people who are registered with the CIRTL email announcement lists. And there would be opportunities to register for the course. So you wouldn't even need to know necessarily if there was a local learning community at your institution, because all CIRTL people at CIRTL institutions would be able to join the course. And as Darren said earlier, it runs, we've been running it in June, July for the past 3 years. And this is your chance to ask questions of panelists. So we have Bailey, Victoria, Lydia. Is that, who am I missing? Is that everybody?
Kate just shared a question in the chat. I'm curious if the Tyrant alumni here can speak to the things they learned about course design that surprised them the most and or that they've been able to use the most since first learning these things.
The thing that I learned the most is about how much people like really hate grading. Like, and from like we had other folks in like I always kind of liked grading, and then I was in a couple of meetings with people who like are in the education department, and they like went on these crazy, incredible rants about how like grading is like the worst thing in the world. But really interesting just ideas about you know, how to technically you have to have assessments, but how can you do that without the especially like inclusivity challenges that grading presents. And so all interesting discussions around assessment, ungrading. Yeah, that's a little more, sorry, my internet connection is weird. Yeah, so I think that's been the most interesting part for me, is the new ways to think about grading and assessments. Particularly like, for example, self-assessment, having students self-assess their participation as opposed to basing it on, their attendance or something. Just, yeah, really interesting things I hadn't thought about before. Those are what sticks in my mind.
I would say the course concept, like sequencing, course concept mapping was very helpful for me to think about how to order things and where to focus. The other part that was helpful for me, right, as I mentioned that, yes, I was transforming my research into teaching, but it wasn't a direct relationship, and that my dissertation, which I was deeply enmeshed in when I was doing this and defending, is really about collaborative governance and energy democracy. So the course that I teach is not about the environmental wicked problems and deliberation in that context, but it is about those communication processes. So one of the big takeaways for me was also that process of thinking about the intersections of my expertise with what I could really create a course about, which wouldn't be all the nuances and intersections of my dissertation in the same way.
Lydia points to something that we hear often in our local learning community conversations, which is usually, I guess, around week 3 or so, there's a panic moment that many of the participants have, which is where they have to start reducing the amount of things they want to include in their course because they realize it's just not gonna fit in a typical 16-week semester. And there's a little grief process that happens there as we help them let some of that go and place it in a different imaginary syllabus for another course that they can design. But their dissertations are always like, they're so big and there's so much they want to include, but not all of that can go into, say, a 300 level undergraduate course. And Victoria points to the idea that the local synchronous learning communities always have these conversations that take whatever content was in the videos, and we extend those conversations always based on what's at the top of the minds of the participants in the room on that day, or you know, in the air at that moment. So the content in the videos ends up being a launching point for further conversations. Someone in the chat asks, what would you change about your experience after finishing Tyrant? This is from Amir. I'm wondering if they're asking about things you wish had happened, or maybe things you would have done differently in your course syllabus. Those are 2 very different questions, but some thoughts about that.
I think I don't know if this is like possible because so Tyra happens in the summer, right? When like theoretically everyone is resting and has the time. And I think finally after summer 5 of being in grad school, kind of realizing that actually summer is like the worst time for me, just personally. Like I have to come back. I have to come back home, and my mom has, you know, has dementia and all this. I have to do all this like horrible family stuff, like sucks all the energy out. And so I'm like, oh, actually, I don't. And I didn't have as much mental capacity as I should have when I was taking the course. You know, just actually summer happens to be the most mentally draining time for me, and so I almost wish it had magically been when I had more mental energy to put into those, like, you know, the feedback and things that you do with your asynchronous group. You know, just wish I had more energy, or maybe if it was during the school year when I'm normally on. Summers, I'm just like, finally after summer 5, I'm accepting that summers are just a wash for me. I can't do anything. I haven't done a lick of work on my dissertation all summer long. So just accepting that about myself. And so yeah, I think it's just like, is making sure to finding that mental energy and giving it the energy that it deserves, I think is something that, because it does take time and energy to be keeping up with something that much on a weekly basis throughout the summer or throughout any time. So I think that's the main thing, is I would have tried to figure out how to guard my mental resources better to a lot more to the course.
We see that too as facilitators, Victoria, which you know as being a co-facilitator, is that we have ambitious ideas as we're approaching the summer, and then a reality strikes for each of us about how much time and energy we really have available. And the pandemic doesn't help any of that. And really, we're there to support participants as far as they're willing and happy to go with their course projects. So we just encourage them to stick it out and do what they can with the course projects, even if it doesn't end up in the 3-minute course pitch. One person asked, when is a good time to take the course, 3rd or 4th year of graduate school? I would say for me as a facilitator, I see Bailey chiming in, that really once you kind of know what your area of where you're headed with your area of expertise, once you got your proposal ready and you're starting to focus, is a really good time. And especially as you're starting to look towards what your next career step is. Bailey, did you want to step in here too?
Yeah, definitely after you're out of coursework, not writing your own papers. But yeah, I think there is a kind of a sweet spot of, when you've gotten enough of your sort of dissertation research started, but maybe you're not so sunk into like, oh shit, I got to finish this dissertation and I got to like apply to the job market. But also that, because as we've heard from people saying, it's not actually going to end up looking directly at like your dissertation. You sort of find pieces of it, or you let go pieces. As I think there's kind of a point before you finalize that dissertation where, that's actually a really great chance for you to sort of think creatively about your dissertation, and it helps. This is something that I think actually we haven't emphasized, but we could. Designing these courses helps you think about your dissertations in a different way that can be really fruitful. So you're both getting the sort of teaching out of it, but also enhancing your research as well.
Thanks so much, Bailey. I see that we're at the top of the next hour, so we should close up. Let's everyone thank Bailey, Lydia, Victoria, Darren's here, Kate too, for managing lots of the discussion and video. I know Anna and Tom and Alex and someone else I can't remember weren't here, but we're so grateful for all of these alumni and current facilitators to share their expertise. I'll be able to hang out for a few minutes if there's people who want to stick back and ask some questions in a more informal setting. But thanks so much for being here and sharing this time with us.
And thank you too, Katie, for your facilitation and work on this.